Okay, so here's a continuation of looking at the bearing again. I guess what I'm having a challenge with is that the bearing can go in and out. You can see that there. But wouldn't this bearing retainer keep the bearing from going out this way? And when the axle is in the car and the retainer snugged up, it seems like, again, the axle can still keep going in and out, like the retainer is not all the way up against this bearing to keep it from going like that. So that would be the retaining area in there. So my question is then, is it, still just a bad bearing that they shouldn't be able to go in and out like that? Or, let me take off my safety wire here, just keeping the retainer out of the way of the picture. Or should that retainer be totally up against that bearing, tight, which would keep that bearing from going in and out anyways? That, I'm thinking like a wheel bearing here, until you have the backing up against it of that washer, that the wheel bearing has, play in it in the rollers. So I don't know if the bearing is not far enough this way, because when the retainer is all the way snugged down, it obviously is not tight up against the bearing, or else the bearing would not be able to move out like that if the retainer was right up against it. So there's some kind of a gap then between the retainer and the bearing, which is allowing the bearing to go in and out. So that's what I think is kind of the challenge here. And maybe it's not just a worn bearing, but then again, people that have used these bearings for a long time or seen them for a long time may say to me, "No, Jim, that's just a worn bearing. There should be no play like that in that bearing, and that the retainer right up against it is not the issue." And if I look in there, it looks like the bearing is seated as far as it can go up against this flange area in here. So I don't think the bearing's going to go in any further this way. So it's a matter of the retainer either not coming up tight enough against it to take up that slack, or the bearing shouldn't have that slack in it in the first place. Alright, see what other people think.